It came around earlier this year to, came around's the wrong
That's all right.
word. You endorsed a bill earlier this year that did expand modestly the opportunities for offshore oil drilling, energy drilling, I should say, because most of it's actually natural gas.
Yeah.
Was that purely a function of, I think I'm going to say political, no, I'm going to say, was that purely a function of the fact that oil at that time was, I don't know, $130, $140 a barrel? It's now, I just checked, at $88
it's amazing,
a barrel. Are you going to, as you go forward, are you going to, if we go into a period where oil actually does hover at $100 or less, do you still think that offshore oil drilling makes sense? What did change your mind on that?
What I've never been against drilling. What I have done is supported the interests of the states who wanted that offshore moratoria in place. And if you look at South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, California, those 4 key states, they have economic interest in protecting their beaches, their tourism, and of course, given the high-profile spills, the environmental consequences of enormous amounts of oil being released into the ocean, I think their point of view was quite legitimate, and one that, in effect, the Congress supported, not because we didn't like drilling or not because we didn't think we should drill more, but because those states over and over again requested that moratorium be in place. 2/3 of the shelf is already open for leasing, most of it in the Gulf, as you know. And what's ironic with the discussion that went on during the summer was one of the main proponents, John, of the moratorium was a governor of a fairly well-known and large state by the name of Jeb Bush, who over and over again in the early part of the decade and in his tenure as the governor said, please keep the moratorium in place. So the Republican Congress and the Republican President could have lifted that moratorium if they wanted when they control both branches of government. So the caveat I put on the additional drilling, or the caveats I've put on it, are that those states ought to have a say, just like I want us to have a say when it comes to developing oil shale. I've chafed when I've been in Washington on the floor and I see members who won't be mentioned from Tennessee and Ohio and all parts east stand up and say, we're going to produce that 800 billion barrels of oil shale in Colorado. What's wrong with those Coloradans? Why aren't they moving? This is about it. Who have no clue about our climate and the energy necessary to extract oil shale, the water resources, and the effect on the lives of people who live in western Colorado. The other caveat, and it's not because you're always on top of this, you know, is look, the oil companies, and it's a broad industry, it's a complicated industry, it's a layered industry. And there's one other aside, I'll hold that. When I win, I've said to my friends in the oil and gas industry, I have fewer of them than I might have had 6 months ago or a year ago, look, I'm going to learn even more about your industry. Your industry is important to Colorado. It's unfortunate in this campaign that the simplification of issues and positions results in various groups being tormented or individuals being tormented or criticized or the subject of a lot of negative advertising. But I'm going to learn even more about your industry so I can understand where the challenges are for you and where that balance point is. But there are millions and millions of acres already available for leasing or held in the portfolios of the oil companies. They ought to be drilling on those acres. I've talked to independents and wildcatters. They feel a little bit like the Big Five lock up a lot of that stuff, and they'd like a shot because there's only a limited pool of labor, limited capital, limited pipeline, limited drilling rigs, limited ships to go out and do the drilling. And so for all the talk about drill, and did Governor Palin correct Senator Biden?
I believe he did, yes. Drill, baby, drill.
There's for all that talk, to ramp that up as if was being proposed immediately is not realistic. So in the end, my point was, I said, look, I've never been opposed to drilling. What I have been opposed to is the belief that somehow our energy future is all about oil and gas solely, or that frankly our energy policy ought to be written by the oil and gas industry solely. And they've had a lot of seats at the table, as you know.